Hi, and welcome to Power Up Project's vlogcast. My name is Kim Power. I'm an artist, art writer, curator, teacher, and presenter. Today, I'm pleased to welcome Yana Beylinson, a painter from Uzbekistan located in Brooklyn and Staten Island, New York. Yana paints flowers and still life in rich textural impasto and joyful color. She is a graduate of Baruch College and has further studied at the New York Academy of Art and the School of Visual Arts through their continuing education program. Yana has been a finalist in the 14th International Art Renewal Center and the Artist Magazine 34th Annual Competition. She was included in the 2019 exhibitions Women Artists at Abend Gallery in New York City and Painting the Figure Now too at the Wausau Museum of Contemporary Art in Wisconsin. Currently, Yana has a solo show at Abend Gallery entitled Memento Vivere. Welcome, Yana. It's so nice to see you and have this occasion to meet you and explore your work.
Kim, it's a pleasure to meet you as well and to be here.
So, are you in Brooklyn or Staten Island today? Is that where your studio is?
Yes, I'm in Staten Island, and it's been a blessing during COVID because we have a house, and my studio takes the whole floor, and I didn't have to leave my house to go to work, which was perfect.
Oh, that's great. And I know you walked me through the area where your work is downstairs. It was so beautiful to see all that. Maybe you can take a picture later and share it with me. I'd love
I
to see
will,
more.
I will, sure.
Great. And so you're painting in Brooklyn as well, or you have a studio there?
No, we used to live in Brooklyn, and my goal was to be established in the industry city. And but our plans changed. We got into this big house, and again, it's just so convenient with the children and the dog, so it's perfect.
That's great to have it all in one place. How do you balance that with having a family and the dog and getting your artwork done?
All I can say, it takes an inhuman discipline. It's not an exaggeration. It really takes an inhuman discipline to do everything more or less well. So on some
Yeah,
days I'm a better mom than I'm a painter, and some days it's the other way around. And I think letting go of perfection is important.
yes, that's definitely something that we all strive for, I think,
It,
especially during COVID times.
it was challenging, but it's all manageable. I feel like this is what one of the lessons of COVID is that things that we didn't think we can do, we can actually do.
That's true. There's some huge advantages in it as well because we're, in our space, in our studios all the time. So maybe we're getting more work done because of that. What's your schedule like with having a family and a dog and getting your work done? Do you get into the studio early in the morning or how do you do that?
Oh, well, on top of it, I also teach
Ah,
on a very regular basis. So yes, I wake up early. I wake up at 6 or 6:30. It's a little bit different now because my oldest son is in college. My little one is 10, so I get him ready for school, and then I usually do yoga, and I head straight upstairs where my studio is, and I start my day. My biggest push is this time while he's still in school, which is until 3. So I
hmm,
try to. This is usually my painting time,
great.
and I usually teach. So when he comes from school and he just needs some time uh, to relax a little bit, that's my time to sort of clean up my painting and possibly start preparing for my lessons. And my teaching, I try to consolidate it in 1 or 2 days,
Oh,
and
okay.
days are full teaching days.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like a real juggling act.
It is, but again, it's all possible. It's all possible. I don't really have downtime, but then when I paint, this is my, it just gives me such huge. influx of energy, and I don't need to rest.
Oh, that's great. And so, what are you teaching exactly?
I teach two things which sometimes overlap. So one is Photoshop for artists
Mhm.
that I teach as a group. The new group is coming up in April, by the way.
Mhm. Oh,
And it's a pretty specific to artists. So it's not the real Photoshop course. I don't go through all the tools. I just focus on what's important and how we can apply it. That's one. The other one is painting mindfully class,
oh,
which is private, and I tailor it to each student. So it's I do have a program which is pretty set, but I certainly make it unique for each person. I feel like it shouldn't be cut and dry, and I have no intention of teaching it yet as a book.
okay. That's wonderful to have that one-on-one, I think.
It's I derive a lot of pleasure from
Oh, that's great. So, tell me a little bit about your background. What was the focus of your studies at Baruch College, and did you paint before you studied there?
it. Yes, in Uzbekistan, I always painted and then drew as a child, and I went to an art school which I started when I was 9 or 10, and I graduated when I was around 16. And that was a very classical Russian art school, very
Okay.
very tough.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and since then we came here, and then I was um, about 19 years old, so I was very curious about all this internet. Like, what is internet? It was such a new, exciting thing, and my major in Baruch was computer information systems, and
Okay.
I wanted to understand how this internet worked.
Huh.
And I started working for an internet startup while I was still in college. I was in the last year,
Okay.
and that was an interesting uh, experience. I mean, it was really amazing how quickly it developed, and in all the terms, how a like little company grew so much, and as my sense of self-importance, which was kind of silly because I was in my early 20s. But then the bubble burst. Like, now thinking back, I think it was bound to happen. How quickly it was, and naturally quickly it was growing. But anyway, so my life started changing since then.
Huh. So, were you painting while you were doing these informational studies as well?
Uh, I so what I was doing, and I graduated in 2000. Now it's 2021. So for the past all on and off for almost 20 years, I've just been obsessively taking continuing education courses.
Oh,
And
right. You studied at the New York Academy of Art and
I started,
SVA.
yes, but I don't think I've done anything like the normal expected way. So I created my own crazy, let's call it a very customized master's program.
Okay.
So what I did, I just took full advantage of living in New York City, and I studied in every single, like, I don't think I missed one,
Huh.
every single art and design school.
Wow.
Yeah, so I just stood for while I was still working for my internet startup, I was really jumping all over the place. You name it, I've been there. Uh,
Okay.
Cooper Union, Parsons, Pratt, SVA. Now, when I came to SVA, I really felt connection. Like, I think it was the first time I really felt connection with the place, and I stayed there for. But again, it was very. So I felt I just want to take courses in what I'm curious about. So
Hmm.
it's and I never got my master's degree
Hmm.
for a whole, not because I didn't want to, but things got in the way. So I had my first son when I was relatively young, and motherhood and all of that. And but I always felt that maybe it's not for me. Maybe I will not do well in a something that's very structured. So
Mm,
maybe just do it this way. I develop it. I mean, the downside is I don't have a brief. The
mhm,
upside is I do exactly what I want. So
mhm.
anyway, it was a whole journey of that. Now, when I came to New York Academy of Art 6 years ago, that was a revelation. I truly felt like I found my place. So I love this institution so much, and I miss it tremendously now.
I love hearing that because I graduated from there in 2014. So it's my alma mater and I really love them.
I consider them my alma mater as well, although again I don't have a degree, but I went to all the events and I have a lot of friends from there, so it's just a huge source of inspiration.
Oh, that's great. So who did you study with there? I think there were some names that I recognized when we talked about it earlier.
Yes, I studied with Alyssa. So I studied with Alyssa Monks first, and that's how I came to know about the New York Academy of Art. I didn't. It
Okay.
wasn't my radar before that.
Okay.
Now she taught a group class which I took at the academy, and then I studied with Lisa Lebowski, who is your friend, I know, and Alyssa's friend. And then with I wanted to take a uh, like figure painting drawing. So Robert Armata
Oh,
was and is wonderful. So
I
I
studied with Robert too at the academy when I was getting my MFA.
so you know how wonderful he is and
Mm-hmm.
encouraging. So I studied with him for 3 years, but that's something that is just like you know it could go for 10 years and I'll still enjoy it. And we have a great group of people there, which we became friends with. Like that's something I didn't expect. I thought, okay, you form these friendships when you go into a graduate program, but we were lucky, and it just became a place of conversation and inspiration and friendship. So
Oh, that's great. So you build a sort of cohort are you still talking to all those people and
yes, yes,
looking at each other's work and
yeah, always, yes.
oh, that's great. So what kind of skills did you find that were really helpful, like for Melissa, for example?
Oh, Alyssa, it's I don't know when to start. I think, the biggest thing which I brought into my work is that decisiveness and complete conviction in your work and in the next step and the next step and I think it really infuses or it amalgamates into belief in yourself. I think there's so much correlation between how you paint and how you are, even when you're not feeling that confident, which I'm not always, but you kind of have to. It's almost like when you step on a stage and you have to, okay, so the eyes are on you, you have to act,
Mm-hmm.
or you step on a battlefield and you have to go in, with your sword. And so at this point, you stepped on the stage or whatever, and there's no looking back, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
So she taught me the steps. So a studio or being in front of the canvas is a sacred. This is the act almost of stepping into the space of action.
Mm.
So, okay, no time for decision, no time for double guessing.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you move, and you can analyze it if you want later.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Wow. Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I think that that's something that we call flow, right? And when you're in the flow,
Yes.
you're not thinking about it in a way that we typically think left brain. We're analyzing
Yes.
every single
Exactly.
move. You're actually just taking the action.
Yes. Precisely. But what I learned recently is that okay, so we do have these two sides of our brain, and I feel like we cannot use them at the same time. I feel like they cancel each other out,
Hmm.
but you can always, so while you go through this period of battle or performance or whatever this part is, which is very in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I can, so next day or even at the end of this day, I can step into the shoes of a teacher and I can teach myself. So I analyze it now with a different mind and I'm asking, okay, so what's working here and what's not working? But I'm putting on a different hat at this time.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. And I agree. I'm a teacher too. So I can easily look at my work or other people's work. And I also, I'm an art critic and art writer. So I also have a critical mind. So I can wear that hat or I can take it off when I'm actually doing painting myself. And I think that that's really important to be able to know when to wear that hat and when you don't need to have it on.
Yes, exactly.
That's great. Well, I'm going to share with everybody your beautiful work with Abend in Memento Vivere. Am I pronouncing that right?
I think so. I have to say because it's Latin, I can ask my oldest son who
Okay. Well,
who
hopefully we're getting it right.
so I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. There we go. All right. So we should be looking at and be able to see your beautiful impasto and brushwork just in this original image. So this is your first solo show with Abend, right?
Yes.
And I want to say Abend Gallery is in Denver. How did you develop a relationship with Abend?
Well, like a lot of things in my life, they were almost accidental. Uh, I submitted some work for a flower themed show that became a part of the group show. Since then, I was in several group shows in this gallery. And when I painted this body of work, I didn't, let me just sort of dial back. It was painted completely, almost completely during COVID. And when I started, it was just, I felt like everything is so in this state of chaos and you don't know what will happen tomorrow. I, I was sure that the art world will not survive this. And in some way, it freed me just to sort of do what I want. So it's all the inhibitions that I had before, it's just, they dissolved. So anyway, to answer your question is at this point, I was already really underway in creating this, but I didn't plan it. Like nothing in my life is planned. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't plan this for a solo show or any kind of show. I just kind of wanted to study things and understand.
Okay.
I wanted to process my feelings because I was in a state of extreme fear
Mm.
and like the uncertainty, like everything. We don't have to even repeat that, but we all felt that, and it just like organically, I started creating, these ala primas, and the feeling that I was getting out of myself was, to my great surprise, it was joy and hope, and which like you just don't plan for that. So anyway, so when I connected with Dave in the summer, the majority of this has been painted and it started to group itself into a body.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. And you mentioned Alla Prima. Are they all Alla Prima paintings?
They all started
Okay.
as an alpine. Some
Can
of them are still are, like this one that I just let it be.
okay. Can you define alla prima for our audience? Because I know what alla prima is, but maybe somebody who's watching this, they might not know what your personal definition is for alla prima.
Sure. Well, alla prima or basically means, this is French term which I also love, but I'm afraid to mispronounce it. It's called uh, premier coup, means at
Mm-hmm.
first strike, I think, or something like that. So anyway, so this is when you're painting in a almost like impressionistic way, and you just lay down strokes,
Mm-hmm.
This is how you feel the first layer. So without much planning, it's quite quick. And
Okay.
traditionally, it was done, I think, outside and definitely from light. Although that's how historically it was. So now, of course, it can be from a reference, but the idea is you go really without overthinking it, and you lay down strokes. So the first layer, which might remain just that first layer.
Okay. And then after the first layer, you might actually paint more on top of those layers.
Yes, exactly. But it depends on what my goal is for a particular piece. Like this one, for instance, that one was painted completely from a photo reference because sometimes you get into a technical bind. This I took this reference on my kitchen counter, and
Okay.
I cannot, I just physically cannot paint it from life. And also, this light only lasts for maybe maximum 2 hours, maybe less. So there are some technical issues that you just have to resolve. So in this case, because I wanted to paint it, but I couldn't technically do it from live, I did it from a reference. But it started also as an prima. It was very painterly and very chunky in the first layer.
Okay. So I'm wondering, it sounds like you're giving yourself a sort of time limit when you're creating alla prima. Do you set a timer or watch the clock and say, okay, I'm going to get this done in this amount of time?
Yes, yeah, in that sense, yes. And I always so it's 25 minutes. So I think it's a kind of almost a classical kind of way of breaking the time. I set my timer usually for 25 minutes, and in this time I work furiously. I don't stop. I give myself a little rest, 5 minutes, to get my coffee or look at my phone if I need to, and then I go at it again.
How
And
interesting. That's a great way to override that analytical part of your brain.
but also not to get distracted. I feel like it's such a huge distraction, like just everything and our phones on computers or but if I but it also comes from meditation because I'm a long time meditator, so it's the same idea. So when you put the timer on, you don't get distracted. This is what you do.
Right. That makes sense. You don't get caught up in monkey mind, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I love music, not podcasts, but music.
Okay.
No, it's usually either classical or you will probably laugh now. This Indian devotional songs.
Okay. No, no, I'm actually not going to laugh because I used to listen to some stuff like that when I was working too, as long as I couldn't recognize the words.
Exactly. Yes. If it's in a language that I don't know, or if it's classical, yeah, there are no lyrics. So yes.
Right. That's such a great point. I used to listen to opera and,
Hmm.
my brain would start to make words out of it and make up stuff that I might have recognized. But it was a great way to just lock out that kind of thinking brain and just be present. So that really makes sense to me. I love hearing that. Is there a particular classical artist, music artist that you like?
Well, I really stick with the really classical. So Vivaldi and Bach
Ah,
from the past, but I love Philip Glass from the modern.
oh yeah, Philip Glass is great too. I'm a big fan of Vivaldi's Four Seasons. So
Yes, this is I think my ultimate favorite. I think he was such a genius.
yeah, and it just really transports you.
Yes, yeah.
Wonderful. So the title of your exhibition, I just want to go back to looking at that. The title of your exhibition is Memento Vivere, and it translates from the Latin remember to live. And it's a direct counter directive to the more common memento mori, whose translation is remember you must die. There is certainly a very rich history behind the memento mori, from representation of the dance macabre or dance of death created in the late Middle Ages, a time when the Black Death that wiped out much of the European population to the vanitas of the 17th century Dutch Golden Age. In fact, your painting Vanitas, which I'll show in a moment, borrows its name from this and is inspired by the latter. How did you transmute it into a visual statement about thinking about how we live our lives, and how is this meaningful to you?
Well, first of all, talking about memento mori, which is, well, first of all, I absolutely love 17th century Dutch still lives. And so, again, it's my point of view. I feel like late Middle Ages and even 17th century, there was something about life that was so like precious and touch and go almost. And I think it's what was more felt in the Middle Ages. But anyway, there was such preciousness about life, but almost like looking at it from a very, almost like a fly in the ointment kind of thing, that you cannot allow yourself to truly enjoy the fruits of your life and the pleasures and the actual food, but you always have to remember that it's not going to last.
Mm-hmm.
And my feeling is that it almost had to come with a moral of sorts. Like you had to pin this moral on something beautiful. Like you put together this gorgeous, you know, a spread and this food and this riches, and then you had to almost put a moral in it to, I don't know, like to almost bring it down a bit, or maybe to make it more acceptable. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, why do that when it's almost the opposite? Like we're put here, and how long? Again, with COVID, it's almost the same lesson that people took from the Black Plague. I mean, thankfully, it's not as bad, and we have the vaccine. But it's been such a great teacher in that, yes, there is an underpinning of a moral in everything we do. Yeah, it's all passing. We are aging during this talk. We
Yeah.
age. And, the apple on my counter, it gets rotten, or you know walls disintegrate, or walls of my house in your apartment building. Yeah, as we talk, you know but what should be the focus? Because it's almost like a glass half full or half empty kind of thing. So anyway, it's a complete opposite. So what COVID pushed me to understand is that it's like all of this which has color and light into it, and it's passing, but that's the reason to celebrate it. So it's a complete opposite.
That's an interesting way to look at it. You're looking at lifting us up rather than reminding you every day that there's some sort of impending doom, I guess.
I don't subscribe to this notion that, yeah, this post-apocalyptic visions, or because we don't know what will happen this year, or I don't know, even tomorrow. We really don't. So we should just really suck all the juice out of life, and it doesn't have to be immoral. Like it has to be complete. Just pleasure doesn't have to be immoral.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious as far as like compositionally what you've taken from those Dutch masters and those Dutch still lifes of the Golden Age and brought into your work.
Well, it's a lot of it. I do, study things obsessively. Compositionally, I feel like they're probably not my favorites in terms of their overall composition,
Mm,
because a lot of them tend to be very, I think, iconic is the term. So that's
mm-hmm.
almost like Rachel, like this sumptuous vase of flowers, and I feel like compositionally they are quite weak actually. The
Mm,
strength lies in in this interplay of light and shadow, and on the detail and surface. I think that's period has its strengths and weaknesses. So for me, and again, my own opinion, I did not take a lot from this period in terms of composition,
Okay.
but light, light and shadow, and it just again, it's so life and death. It's so the duality of everything. That's what I took
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Well, and since you brought that up, I'm curious if that's not what you're looking at. Here's some books that you have posted on your social media, and I'm just curious, are are these the artists that you're particularly looking at when you're thinking about painting, or is there someone particular artist that you're keeping in mind when you're working on your paintings?
from. Well, it's it's a very small part of my library and my inspirations, but uh, Japanese woodblock prints are and Chinese traditional Chinese painting that's has been a huge influence for me. I even and again to add to the uh, places where I studied. So I studied with a traditional Chinese brush artist in the China Institute.
Oh, wow. You
So
really did study everywhere.
and I don't stop, and
That's great.
I think I will never stop.
That's great.
And which and I took from it such a huge respect to Astro, and that's again a part of my philosophy. But in terms of the composition, I feel like Japanese. So at the Edo period, it's called the floating wall. I
Hmm.
feel like that's the height, well, to my eye, the height of the Japanese prints, and the compositions are just gorgeous and very modern.
Well, and they have a different hierarchy of space too, don't they?
Yes. And then again, a Chinese brush painting, or this book actually here, the third book from the bottom, How to Read Chinese Paintings. Oftentimes, I don't know, 80%, 70% of the surface is space, and they were not afraid to leave it, but it wasn't that space. It had a life to it. It was an active participant.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So you feel like you're in the space.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, we were talking about being in the moment and the way you leave a stroke after you lay it down. I want to just revisit that notion because I think it's really important in your work. I'm wondering, well, I understand it's come from a sort of idea of meditation, but I'm really wondering how do you apply the work? Are you using brushes? Are you using palette knives? And how do you manage to model the form with just those individual strokes?
Well, I use brushes, a lot of different brushes, because the idea is every stroke is unique. And,
Hmm.
I try to. So it's mindfulness taken to the extreme,
Okay.
because the it's such a restraint not to blend it,
Hmm.
and not to prettify it, and not to mold it into a shape.
Hmm.
So this painting is obviously from life, and it only took me, I think, 3 hours or less, and it's also a small one.
Hmm.
And I feel it's really this is the essence of. I mean, it's really. I didn't do the analytical study of this. I just let it be in the first stage, which is completely emotional. So I look at the overall shape. I use it as a starting point, because I have to base it on something
Hmm.
real, and then I just go at it, and then uh, you know I mix and apply, and not letting myself to blend.
Hmm.
And it's in a very pure shape of applying strokes.
you must have to have like multiple brushes in order for
Yes.
not to get a muddy brush when you're trying to react so quickly.
I have several, but I also clean them after each stroke. So painting for me takes a very long time, not even the application, but the in between moments.
Okay.
It takes me a long time to mix the color. I'm very crazy about just getting it right.
Okay. Yeah,
But
I saw you matching it in your video. I saw you matching it with your palette knife against whatever it was you were looking at. I don't know if you're working at a digital image or actually the flowers themselves. So that was interesting. Can you talk about that process of matching the color?
well, well, first of all, I have a big palette knife. It's shaped like a hoof, like a horse's hoof, and it allows enough surface for me to see. So if it was something small, I wouldn't be able to.
So you match the color, and then do you pre-mix a whole bunch of that color once you've matched it?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. And then do you tube it up and once you've mixed the color so that you have it for other paintings, or is it just for that painting itself?
No, it just for that painting, and also I mix as I go, and also adjust as I go. So something maybe when I start, it's like every day it's a new beginning. So maybe when I start mixing, I don't get something exactly right. So I always double check. So this part takes a very long time, and it just takes incredible patience. I don't apply a stroke if I'm not sure about that it's the right chroma and the right value.
Okay, that's interesting. So it makes sense that you're able to work in such a free way because you've done all the groundwork, all the preparation
Exactly.
before you've even gotten there.
Yes, you got it. That's exactly it. Because I analyze it and I study it and I feel it for such a long time before I put down my first stroke. So I
Okay.
look at it so much, it's almost like I know it already.
Oh, that's so interesting. You're sort of internalizing it. So you're not just working from life, but you're also working from memory in a way.
Yes. But so by the time I go through all the stages and my analytical stage, and eventually I go into a space where I don't rely on any reference, but that's because I have the emotion that I have this emotional memory, and I have enough to go on if it needs.
Okay, so is that like at the very end you're putting on the finishing touches and you already know where you're going and then you don't
Yes,
have to look at your reference anymore.
exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. So you just kind of respond to what's working for you, and how do you know this is the famous question, and everybody asks this and I love this question. How do you know when it's done?
I have to say it was for me a tremendous struggle to understand this. Tremendous, and I really couldn't get it for a very long time. So sometimes I just want to for it to be done, and I look at it and it feels undone, and then I go back at it. Um, I think recently, and it's as recent as this past year, is that I started to get a pretty clear feeling when it's nearing completion and when it's done.
Hmm.
What it's it's very recent. Also, what really helps, and that's a part of what I'm teaching, is that when you put on your analytical hat, so what I usually do, I document my process, and I document so at least once a day, but more often I take pictures of my process, and then I take it into my computer and I look at it in Photoshop as I look at the work of my students. And that's when I'm not me the painter, I'm me the critic or the teacher. And then I create a kind of a removed perspective
Hmm.
because I see it on screen and not in real life. So it's
Hmm.
almost like this degree of separation.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense. And then I'm able to move myself away enough to analyze it. And then I have some tools which I also teach of how to analyze the work. And this is where again all my studying and my obsessive knowledge of art history comes useful, because I look at composition. I look at, now I'm very much into color theory, so I look at that, what
Okay.
makes sense. And this separation, which is again, it's a newly found tool for me, it's incredible. It really is incredible. So it taught me to teach myself and allowed me to teach others.
Well, that's great. It makes sense that you can be more objective by stepping away from it like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
In- How interesting. I love that you talked about your process photos because I'm sharing this a little bit now just so everybody can see what your process is, and it's really fascinating to me. So you do start with a toned canvas in the beginning usually, or not?
Yeah. So this is actually perfect example, because usually my canvas is yellow, or sometimes it's magenta.
Okay.
Just when you showed this white, this I meant as a, so there's a small ones. I meant them as a study,
Mm-hmm.
and they of course defied me, and they became paintings in their own right, as it
Mm-hmm.
happens.
The heart wants what the heart wants.
Yes, exactly. It's funny how that happens. But anyway, yeah. So usually, if you go back to the one with the yellow background, that's how the majority of them starts.
Okay. So you start with the drawing on the, you draw on the toned canvas first, and then you paint over that drawing?
Yeah, I draw with the paint.
Oh, you draw with the paint. Okay. So there isn't like a pencil sketch underneath there
No,
that we're not seeing.
no, I start painting.
Okay. Okay. So the toned canvas is already dry, and then you're
Yes,
building
exactly.
that structure.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the drawing is very simple. I go for very geometrical, which which allows me to really get the structure down.
Okay. Interesting. I noticed that you're usually doing very close up and close cropped paintings, really honing in on your subject. I'm just curious how you make those choices and why that's what you choose to do.
Well, a part of it is I was a graphic designer for a while. I studied graphic design, so I have a lot of influences from this part of this. So a designer's mind, although there is a lot of overlap with a painter's mind, but I think it teaches you better overall composition.
Hmm.
And it's also quick because you do it, well, now people use collages, but now you do it in computer. So, and also influences like posters by Milton Glaser, for example, or I know I have a huge number of influences, but there's something almost inevitable in in his posters, that the way everything makes sense, and it's also a pretty cropped view.
Okay.
So that's just one of the influences, but also going back to Japanese um, Edo period. Also,
It feels very intimate.
well, that,
Like it's in your space. So that's really nice.
yeah, I guess it's almost like a fact that I didn't go for. I think more in terms of recently, like in terms of shapes and colors and how they exist together. And when you do, I forget what is it that I'm working on. So it stops being a flower or a bottle. It becomes
Okay, that's interesting.
and that shape and how they go together.
Interesting. Well, that brings me back to this notion of pattern. You have a love of pattern and incorporate it in your painting sometimes. I just want to go back to the one with the lattice. Let's see if I can find that really quick here. There it is, lattice. So you combine patterns and florals, and it really makes me think of the pattern and decoration movement of the late 70s and early 80s. And it makes perfect sense to me given your side relationship to design and illustration. Can you tell me how you came to design and then back again to painting and how those two worlds collide for you?
Well, as I said, nothing in my life was really planned. It's not a straight path to anything, which
Hmm.
is fine, doesn't have to be. So when I had my fill of technology, web-based, I got tired of it relatively quickly. It was too dry for me. So I taught myself graphic design, and I became a graphic designer. I did it for a very long time, and then I started to incorporate illustration and then pattern making. So I discovered the work of arts and craft movement in Britain and with William Morris.
Hmm.
That was love at first sight. When I discovered his work, I just wanted to know everything about him, and I just decided to make patterns, which I did for I don't know how long.
Hmm.
I just designed patterns, and
Okay.
they became foundational for my work for the past 12 years. So it's another side of my work. It's commercial work, and
Hmm.
it appeared on so many things I can't even remember all of them. Book covers, product design, wallpaper.
Okay.
Um, I was really, really, really into it, and I still have a great appreciation for pattern. There's something very mathematical, like this, I don't know, like the beauty of math, which you can see, and it's logical, but also it defies logic. It's I don't know. I find this tremendous appreciation for that.
Well, also there's the association of pattern in nature as well,
Yes,
right?
yes, of course. Well, we're all a part of a certain pattern. So that is almost an aside. But when I was working on this painting, it was a killer. I worked with it for 2 years, and my feeling was that there has to be something yellow, like a source of light behind it, which I tried to do it with a yellow pillow, and then I painted it out and in, and it was always like going in and out, and I wasn't feeling it. And then I felt that it has to be some geometrical structure that kind of holds it together.
Hmm.
So it was my first experimentation with gold leaf, which I
Okay.
taught myself to. Again, it's one of the things which takes the life out of you because I had to teach myself how to stencil. So I
Hmm.
got different materials for stenciling. I stenciled them out. This is actually one of my geometrical patterns that's I've done for I don't even remember for which project, but anyway. Um, and I stenciled them. I taught myself how to do gold leaf, and uh, and even that I did in several layers because I was when the first layer was done, I painted parts of it out, and I felt maybe I need to bring it back, so I went in it. So it was painting and gold leafing, painting and gold leafing, so back and forth, and just again, I think to sustain this level of experimentation, you just have to be not exactly normal, which
Or an artist. Well, I love how it kind of disappears and breaks down as well. It's not a solid pattern, so it really kind of interweaves itself into the image. So, some of your more commercial work has taken the form of wall installations. I'm wondering if you have any plans to do installation works with your fine art.
well, I would never say no. Besides now, I'm going more into something more stylized. I'm doing collage.
Hmm.
Uh, Again, it all comes to me in shapes and colors, and I think with time more so. So I feel I'm moving away from realism in some sense, or maybe I'll go back into it. I really don't know. But in the moment, it's all about color. So it's possible I don't see it yet, like I can't visualize it yet, but maybe.
I was just wondering because I saw this particular photo that I have up now, and it seemed almost like this could be very much an installation if you
That
did.
Yeah, that was done almost with this in mind. I started working. for the wallpaper company on my own line of wallpaper. Now, where this project will go, I'm not sure because we were stopped during COVID. But we talked with them about um, almost like hand painted wallpaper, so that I start again experimentation. So I started experimenting with this, which didn't take me very far yet. So it's again one of these things. It could be a path that goes somewhere, or maybe not.
Interesting.
But
Interesting.
there's something about scale that I definitely want to explore.
Yeah, because this is bigger than most of your paintings, right?
They're yes, yeah, they're big.
Okay. Interesting. Well, let's talk about some more of your individual paintings in Memento Vivere. Let me just take a look. We talked about lattice. I want to take a look at yellow box. Let's see if I can find that for you really quick here. It's a beautiful painting, and I love that playfulness that I'm trying to figure out what's in the background, and then you're giving the explanation in the title. That's kind of fun. It shows a signature color that you have as a thread throughout this exhibition. What yellows are you working with, and to create that sunny yellow? And is yellow a feeling, or do you typically use it in your paintings? Is it a signature color throughout your work?
Well, first of all, uh, I'm really happy that you saw it because not everybody is seeing it. Yes, yellow is. I feel like the the most important color for my palette. That's how I color the canvases. So when I prepare to work on them, so the meaning, it's joy, it's hope, it's belief, it's life. So for me, it sort of came into a color yellow.
Mhm.
And without going too much into its history, so even now I think that children's or babies' rooms are recommended to be painted yellow because it sparks intelligence. I think they say. Anyway, it's just my personal experimentation with colors, and I'm really heavy into. So I created my own color palette, which is it doesn't have any earth derived pigments. It's all very chemical. Maybe not 100%, but most of it. And I'm just trying to push, values on Chrome and seeing how far I can come in terms of the chroma definition. I feel it. I feel this is the really the color of life for me. And it's really, I feel like the central, as it started to affirm itself, the central parts of my paintings are color and light. And for me, the color of light, the main one is yellow. Why I can't explain.
Okay. Well, everybody's got an association with colors that makes it meaningful for them. And I think that just becomes innate. It becomes part of us again. And it's hard to put a definition on that. And sometimes it's just not necessary to, but I think it's interesting that it's a commonality in your work that you're using it on a regular basis. So I just really became intrigued with that. Like, why? What is obviously yellow is a very important color for you.
Yes, yeah,
So,
it became so.
so I wanted to talk about YWB. Here it is. This is such a beautiful painting. The containers that hold your flowers really just start to disintegrate, and I could see it fitting the or falling under the term that the art writer John Seed has coined and used for his book, Disrupted Realism, in which the real is fragmented. And Seed suggests that this deviation might imply a reference to time, memory, and individual experience, or refer to digital, photographic, or cinematic sources. So I'm curious what your intentions were in dissolving these forms.
Well, first of all, I have to say when this book was about to come out, I I had to pre-order it.
It's on my shelf as well.
Wonderful. it's a wonderful book, and I'm so grateful to John Seed for putting it together in a publication. So that's something that I've been feeling for a while, but I couldn't put a name to it, and he did it so beautifully. And it certainly is a byproduct of our age. But I have to say that for this painting, it's not what I was thinking. So maybe it came out this way.
Interesting.
I was thinking again of Chinese brush painting,
Mm.
and my intention for this painting was to paint it as if I was a classical Chinese brush painter, but looking at the set. So it was painted our prima
Mm.
life, and what I wanted to achieve is that fact of a stroke and just one stroke and one stroke and one, but with the build up that you can do with oil paint. Because in the traditional Chinese brush painting, you don't build up. You create it with ink.
Mm-hmm.
So that it doesn't have a depth or the texture to build up on. So the first pass, which this is not what we see here, but the first pass was even more fragmented
Mm.
and was less of the bottles.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't what it just bug and I left it like that for a year.
Mm.
What bugged me tremendously is that my background it was just completely toned yellow, and that's how I left it because I was painting it in that Chinese classical ish way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's with oil painting, it creates this weird effect that it has a very flat background, and then these flowers were textured, and it seems like so it looked very good on Instagram, but in real life it didn't look complete, and it just kept you know bugging me until I decided to redo it in the sense that I painted, although the background is still yellow, but I painted it more with a sense it has some feeling to it, it has some texture to it.
Okay.
And I
Interesting.
couldn't, yeah, and I couldn't stop myself from adding a bit into the bottles. So
Well,
anyway,
I love it. I love that it breaks up and it feels very atmospheric.
thank you.
Mm-hmm. And you're painting it on paper. I see you paint on both canvas and paper.
Yeah.
I'm curious why you make those choices. What are you usually when you're painting on paper? Is it usually supposed to be a study and then it ends up being a painting? Is that the reason?
Exactly. You just said it. Yeah, it's amazing how, yeah, well, it's nice paper, it's arches paper,
Oh, the
and
oil paper.
old paper, yes. And yeah, I have a whole bunch of it, which I mean completely and honestly just for experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
And they become paintings in their own right, and they just demand. And it's incredible how they end up being in a show or a collector wants them, and then I had to go through this process of okay, so now I have to frame it, and now I have to invest into framing, which I did. But recently, my friend Michelle Dole and my mentor and my teacher, she's just a huge influence. She taught me how to mount them, so I'm very grateful to her.
Oh, great.
So I'm mounting them on a wooden board, and
Oh,
thankfully I don't have to invest much in framing.
that's great. Yeah, I'll have to talk to Michelle and hear what her process is for that because that's definitely something I'm interested in too. Is and you do want to preserve the paper and give it some sort of strong backing because of course if it's just oil paint on paper and it doesn't have a stable back then it's going to crack. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it only and this paper because it's so high quality, it only needs a back. So
Hmm.
once you mount it, it's I think for archival purposes, it's perfect.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Let's take a look at pink and mauve. Let's see if I can find that here. There we go. Oh, we already talked about this, but I love it so much. It's become really an abstract painting as opposed to some of your more identifiable flower arrangements. Is this a visual experiment? Are you thinking about doing more abstract forms and departing from realism? And what does this mean to you conceptually?
I feel like I feel like when you really get into it and when you're really honest about like in your process, you don't try to make it into something. You listen to it as much as you so it's dense. You don't mold it into something with a very heavy hand.
Mm-hmm.
Put a stroke and you listen and it becomes like so when I started it, the only thing I knew that I had very limited time, which is true for many of our paintings. And what it makes you do, it just makes you go quite quickly, but not becoming mindless.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping, you know, keeping the mindfulness at the highest possible value. So
Mm-hmm.
deliberate, but also mindful of time. And you can't. So it was great because it so happened I did not have more time than 3 hours. I
Mm-hmm.
had to stop, and then it was almost accidental because if I had more time, I would probably do something about the edges and prettify it and maybe mold it more into flower shape. But it so happened that I didn't care much about it,
Hmm.
so I let it be, and then when I rediscovered it, it made sense to me. So it wasn't premeditated. Yeah,
Interesting.
I was being mindful and went slowly. I didn't know how it will end up,
Mm-hmm.
but I love this moment when you work and then it dissipates. So the form dissipates and becomes just a collection of shapes and colors and how they interact with each other.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel this is really, well, for me, it's more, there is more truth in it than to keeping it to the phenomenon that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense because we have an immediate visual idea before we actually put a name on something. So it really does speak to that immediacy of our perception. And I kind of wish that I was, well, of course, we all wish this right now. I wish I was seeing it in actual space, in an actual gallery space or on a wall, because then I would be going back and forth looking at it, what it would look like from a distance and what it would look like close up. But I really am enjoying the texture of it, looking at it so close up like this.
Thank you.
And it's interesting that it's in such contrast to your other painting, Bodegon, Bodegon, or I'm
Yeah,
not sure if I'm pronouncing
yeah,
that right.
I think Bodegon, but I need to ask my Spanish speaking friends.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because we talked about this before, but this feels more like real space in contrast to that previous painting than any of your paintings in this whole series in Memento Vivere, because it's got these long cast shadows and clearer spatial cues, such as the knife on the board. And I really love the stained glass window effect of the light going through the pink liquid in that spray bottle and reflecting into the cast shadow, as well as that little slash of turquoise reflected off of the green glass through the green glass onto the water bottle through of the water bottle and onto the white coffee cup. And I'm curious why you chose to portray the space in this way this time. And I'm interested to see if your response is the same, as opposed to the other more open-ended arrangements that sit in an atmosphere of light and color.
Well, first of all, the process here was completely different. It was, yeah, and I came into my kitchen in the morning. That's how my counter, which is, it was not very neat. That's exactly what it looked like. Uh, but that's, I mean, I have a really beautiful light coming in from this side of the house in the morning, and I just grabbed some references, and it's really all about the light. So how the light filtered through these very simple objects and how it just lit up the space, and it became truly magical. It was such a sensation of magic there, which probably leads me to think that magic is all around us. We just have to see it. But yeah, and again, so technical things. So couldn't, I just could not physically paint it in that particular space.
Mm-hmm.
And also it didn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's a I'm not even gonna go get. I couldn't. So okay, so I took references, and what do I do with them?
Mm-hmm.
So the only choice is to use the reference, and then I did start quite uh, in a true alla prima or little rougher way. But as I kept, it has so many layers, and as I kept going in it, it started to become tighter. And I think partly because I was not limited in time. So it's almost a direct, it's interesting how you put them together, but it's almost a direct opposite of Pink and Mauve, because that was very, very limited in time and not caring about the result. And
Mm-hmm.
here, I wanted to get this effect through, so I cared about the result, and I was unlimited in time. So complete opposite. Uh,
Interesting. Interesting.
yeah, so I invested into this somewhat larger board. Anyway, the point being is that I really wanted to. It was such a beautiful effect of this colors, and then it's mostly neutral. Like the majority of it is just a whole host of these beautiful neutral colors, which only uh, just exist because such a bright chroma in this neon, almost neon colors.
Mm-hmm.
The light, and again, it's all about the light. Like light and color is the main two main components.
Yeah,
Now,
I think that does really help this kind of stained glass effect that you're achieving here.
which really this painting and this sensation of light just became so important for me because it led me into the exploration of filtering of natural light, which I started doing quite a bit now. So in my studio, I have a balcony, and I have this large door where I have beautiful light again in the mornings. Probably I
Mm-hmm.
have it until maybe 1 p.m. And I devised a whole system of how to catch this light, and I bought different objects which I found not only beautiful, but they allow me to, well, give me just a second, I'll show you one of them. Here, I'm sitting right by this window. So this bottle, like, it's not very
Oh, that's
expensive, but
beautiful.
yeah, I went to the New York Botanical Garden, in their gift store. They have a whole bunch of these little beautiful bottles with different colors.
Hmm.
And Method, one of my favorite companies.
Oh,
So but what I am experimenting, so what this painting became for me, it became a gateway into this experimentation. So what happens if, and how will color filter through different things, and what it will become. So it's just amazing, like, and the shadows and how they interact. It just became a whole pathway into that.
yeah, and I really like the relationship to the pear too, because you're really telling us, this is a solid form and these are transparent forms. So that really rings true. And also just the reflection on the knife as well there, which really speaks to the actual texture of the knife and how it's a reflective surface as well, but a different kind of reflective surface. So there's a lot of, it feels very playful, and I really enjoy that. So do you have a favorite painting in this show that you especially enjoyed making for uh, in this series or at the time? And do the flowers have any special significance for you?
Uh, yes, the flowers in general, yes, and I feel like it's not so much now as I mature and maybe I think more about what my art is about. I think it's the colors more so than the botanical side of them, because how, like, the intensity of the colors, if you look at the petal, especially in the sunlight, or in the natural light, I should say, it's so intense, and you can't really get it uh, through anything else, and that's what I felt in a while. So, and I still am obsessed with flowers. I buy them in bulk to create like a small painting, and um, I feel like for me again, maybe flowers. That's what I think now is more of a gateway into how I feel about colors and to just getting the brightest chroma possible.
Mm.
So this is actually a perfect example because natural light again, natural light and how it lights up the. Now that I'm discovering all objects, but particularly flowers, how they become something quite magical.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's just how light reflects through this very ephemeral, petals and leaves and the changes. So that's another thing that presents a challenge. And then when you paint flowers from life, so this arrangement I did 2 days in a row, and even in the course of 2 or 3 hours, they change.
Mm.
So they either grow or wilt. It's so you have to go with it. You can't fight it. You can't control it. So I think that just flowers such incredible teachers to me.
Yeah, that's a great lesson in being in the moment as well, because you
It
have to
it just
capture it.
it pushes you in the moment, even if you fight it. What choice do you have? So other than if you really want to get it under control, yes, there are ways to do it, but it's not at all what I want to do. I want to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's a dance. I want to understand it. I need it as a partner. So
Mm.
how can I
Hmm.
understand it?
So it's really a collaboration with nature.
For sure.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
So I want to talk about what's on your easel now and what projects that you have coming up. You shared with me this particular painting that I'm not sure if it has a title, if you want to share the title with me, but you were saying that this was something that you're working on currently.
Yeah. So again, with after catching that beautiful light in my kitchen, I bought several objects. Well, some I planned and some just happened, like this painter's tape, which it's almost like a joke for to identify. So this yellow thing, it's a blob. It's a painter's tape, which I just placed by accident on the board, and then I look at it in the light, and it's just gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously it will stay. So the titles come up after I'm done.
Mm.
So CMYK, I think, became very apparent. So that's what it's called.
Okay.
CMYK. So cyan, magenta, yellow, and K being key, which is really black, which is a term from traditional uh, printing. But for us to understand it, it's a print ready mode, which we see in Photoshop, which is really, if you think about it from one way, it's the clear colors of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about from the point of printing. So I didn't, but again, it's nothing about this is very preset. So it's honestly, after I painted it, it just looked like C and Y and
Mm-hmm.
K. You can think of it as the key that pulls it together. So it's complete alla prima, painted from life.
Okay.
I had to adjust it because as the light is moving, I had to constantly move the setup and myself until about one when this light disappears.
Mm.
I have to stop. And then things change constantly. So the shadows, obviously, as the morning progresses more towards afternoon, the color and the length of the shadows change. Um, on top of it, the paint keeps unraveling. So this type of this brand of a paint, it doesn't hold very. It's not very sticky.
Mm-hmm.
So when I put this blob together, which looked perfect when I drew it, it started unraveling and changing shape. So almost like a flower, which is I've been ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, it's just such the light, it's light colors. It's really all about that.
Well, it's really interesting. It makes sense to me that you would immediately understand that tape is a sort of flower itself that's kind of unfolding, and the stickiness of it, just that nature of it. I like the metaphor of the stickiness of the tape and the stickiness of reality, and how we're always trying to get ourselves unstuck. So I love that relationship between being present and those kinds of ideas about um, really this collaboration with nature and your environment. It's fascinating to me. It's been a wonderful experience sharing this conversation with you and getting to know you and getting to know more about your work. And uh, I'm so thrilled that you have this show up at Abend. Again, how long is it up for?
It's up until the end of this month.
Okay.
I think it's up this way until the in the physical space, but I'm sure it will continue being up on the website.
Oh, it's in the physical space as well right now.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Great. Well, I assume people will be able to go see it by making an appointment if they want to, if
Yes.
they're in the area.
Yeah.
Okay. I know everybody has to be really careful right now, but
Yes. Yes. It's by appointment. Well, Kim, thank you so much for having me.
it was my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure. Great talking with you and great talking to you about your work.
Same here.